What up, everybody? It's the midweek edition of the NBA Exchange. I'm your host, Dexter Henry. And if you've been paying attention to the NBA playoffs, you're learning about basketball, that playoff basketball just hits a little different. It's a totally different world. Most teams in their series have played about 2 games, and some are feeling really good, while others are doing what we've seen them do before. More on that coming up on the NBA Exchange. Now, I'm not quite sure what the panic meter level was at in Tinseltown after the Los Angeles Lakers dropped their Game 1 matchup to the Phoenix Suns. But there was no doubt about this. The Lakers had to respond. Most specifically, Anthony Davis, who was basically a no-show in Game 1. Boy, in Game 2, the Brow absolutely showed up, and he set the tone right from the start. Extremely aggressive, had the Phoenix Suns big men in foul trouble. He dropped 34 points to go along with 10 boards and 7 assists in this contest. Now, it wasn't just AD alone. Had help from other superstar LeBron James, who had 23 points and 9 assists as well. As the Lakers showed, word to Rudy T, heart of a champion. And look, the Brow had to show up, and he absolutely did. He performed on the big stage, as we saw this last year in the bubble with the Lakers, where they dropped the Game 1, but then responded strongly in a Game 2 en route to the championship last year. So AD responds big time. Lakers looking strong. They got to be feeling a lot better than they did after Game 1 against the Suns. Now, the other team in LA, the Los Angeles Clippers, well, they also needed to respond after falling in Game 1 to the Dallas Mavericks. But their problem is they are the Clippers. They're also going up against Luka Doncic. And boy, Luka Doncic is already having himself quite the series. Luka Doncic poured in 39 points in Game 2 against the Clippers, just killing the Clippers. At times, it looked way too easy. He was getting whatever he wanted. Shots from outside, shots at the rim. Anybody guarding him could not guard him at all whatsoever. But he had some help too. Tim Hardaway Jr., unconscious, 6 threes on the night, poured in 28 points. KP, Kristaps Porzingis, also at 20. Maxi Kleber with 13. The Mavs are rolling. The Clips are clipping, and they are absolutely in trouble now, down 2-0 with this series headed back to Dallas. The Clippers, many people last year picked them as favorites to win the title. Many people this year said that they also had turned it around. But what we're not seeing is that great defense that we've heard about. What we're not seeing is that mental toughness. That's absolutely now going to be tested and is all on the line. You can't forget this. The blame was placed on Doc Rivers at the end of last season. And right now in LA with the Clippers, it looks like things haven't changed at all. For the Mavericks, man, their superstars rolling. Much anticipated game tonight in New York City as the New York Knicks will host Game 2 of their series against the Atlanta Hawks. They are down 1-0 in the series. We talked a lot about it after Game 1. Ice Trae Young killing the Knicks in the final seconds. And Knicks fans are pretty annoyed with Trae Young. You know they're going to be giving it to him tonight at MSG. But the mayor of New York City, Mayor Bill de Blasio, he had a special message for Trae Young too.
Message to Trae Young on behalf of the people of New York City and anyone who cares about actually playing basketball the right way. Stop hunting for fouls, Trae. I want to quote Steve Nash, one of the great player, great coach. He says, quote unquote, "That's not basketball." Trae, that hawk's not going to fly in New York City. Come on. Play the game the right way. See if you can win. I think the Knicks are going to teach you a lesson.
Look, you got to love Mayor de Blasio talking about Trae Young playing basketball the right way. Not the first person we've heard say this. We saw Brooklyn Nets head coach Steve Nash also make this claim as well. Whether you like the way Trae plays or not, I think that's irrelevant here. I think what's really good for the league and the NBA right now, especially in this Hawks-Knicks series, is Trae Young's the villain. And this is good. We haven't seen a villain since probably the Heatles, the Miami Heat team at the early part of the last decade, and a villain mattering at MSG. You know, if you look back, you can remember the days of Reggie Miller torturing the Knicks fans getting on Reggie Miller. You gotta love that. You gotta love when a guy comes in and embraces the fact that he wants to silence the crowd, and the crowd wants to get on him. We need more of that in the league. So I'm all here for the Trae Young experience. Whether you like how he hunts fouls or not, that's another question. And I'm also here for mayors getting involved in playoff series and maybe needling players a little bit. I like it. Keep it going. It's Wednesday. You know what time it is. That means NBA With Nuance, the first playoff edition of NBA With Nuance. And that means my man Gerard Hector, host of the 7 Footers podcast. You also see him on True Hoop TV. He's with us as usual every Wednesday. Gerard, what's up, man?
What's good, man? As you know, Dex, ain't no hot takes over here, baby. Nuance, all right? You save that for the other shows y'all want to watch.
I love that that's the energy and message that you're giving every week, because we need to let people know exactly what time it is here. Now, it's playoff time, Gerard.
Yes, sir.
And I was saying this at the top of the show. Playoffs hit a little different. It's a different world in the playoffs. We're starting to learn that. You see what I did there? If you see the shirt on the show, then you understand what's going out there. Different world than where you come from in the playoffs. Now, what have been some of your playoff takeaways from what we've seen thus far? Most teams have played at least 2 games, some game 2s that'll be happening tonight, and we'll get to that later. But what is your takeaway from what we've seen thus far in the playoffs?
The first thing that jumps out to me, Dex, is while it is a different world, shouts to Hillman College, the young guys are not overawed by the big stage. Now, as to your point, it's only been 1 to 2 games, so we can't lose our minds. Nobody's in any pressure cooker situations. But the playoffs do hit different, and teams have scouted for these guys and know what's up. And again, I got to tip my hat to Devin Booker, DeAndre Ayton, Trae Young, John Morant. You know, these young dudes, these are all their first playoff experiences. They're not afraid, man. They stepping up on this stage, and they're looking like they are ready for this game. I know we'll talk about Lakers Suns in a minute. Book was going back and forth with his Kentucky brethren, AD, talking that talk. And Book got a little bit of that, like, F you in him, where he's like, he comes into an arena, I don't care if it's LeBron James or whoever, I'm the best player on this floor tonight. And in the playoffs, you have to have that. And we'll talk about this, I think, later on, because, Dex, I love nuance. I love looking at numbers and are they proving what I think is correct? There's something that is not measurable. Whether you want to call it heart or whatever you want to call it. But there is something about this inner belief where you get into a stage where okay, intensity's ratcheting up, physicality's ramping up. But I'm not scared. I'm not afraid. I'm still going to go out and execute and do what I got to do. And I love to see it.
Yeah, I love to see it. It's been enjoyable seeing some of these young guys step up here on the playoff stage. I also wanted to ask you about this, right? When we looked at the regular season, we saw a lot of high-scoring games. Some people are saying the scoring is getting out of control, don't like seeing this. The numbers are too high in these contests. But we've seen early on, first couple of games, over the first couple of days of the playoffs, those scoring numbers totals are going down. A little bit harder to predict those over-unders than it might have been in the regular season. Do you think the lower scoring, the tighter games that we're seeing in the playoffs, does that make for better basketball viewing?
It does, right? So I think, look, it's like in baseball back in the day. It's like in football. You like home runs, you like touchdowns, you like scoring, right? That's what people like, casual people like to see. We want to see you score. But ultimately, when it comes down to the playoffs and winning a championship, you got to get stops, all right? Offense sells tickets, defense wins championships, right? It's cliche, but it is true. And the other thing you're having in the playoffs that you don't have in the regular season, you ain't playing Orlando, you ain't playing Chicago, you're not playing Minnesota, you're not playing Sacramento. All these terrible teams don't exist in the postseason. Everybody is good. And remember, NBA regular season, a lot of games in a short amount of time. Playoffs, you're getting 2-3 days rest. And as I mentioned, every team is good. You and I have been in locker rooms. We cover the league. We know what happens. Scouting report for regular season game is 1 sheet with 5 bullet points on it. Scouting report for the playoffs is a binder with like 1,000 pages in it. We know all your actions, everything you're doing. We're watching a ton of film so the guys know what they're doing. They know we got 2 days of rest coming up or what have you, so I can exert all the energy necessary on the defensive end.
Yeah, absolutely. And we're seeing all those adjustments being made from game to game. I want to talk about a team that some people may accuse you of being a fan of, even though I know that you're not. That would be the Utah Jazz, right? They are down 1-0 in their series to the Memphis Grizzlies. They will be playing game 2 tonight in Utah. Obviously, in the first game, they did not have Donovan Mitchell. So a lot of the talk is around Rudy Gobert, finalist for Defensive Player of the Year. You have spoken about a lot to me about Rudy leading the league in plus minus. However, Rudy wasn't necessarily able to lead the Jazz to that game 1 victory. So I think the question arises, 1, how valuable is truly Rudy Gobert? And is Donovan Mitchell more valuable than him to the Jazz, as might appear, based on their loss to the Grizzlies? Or is there some overreaction there? What do you think about that?
Well, for sure, there's some game one overreaction, right? Let's remember, the Memphis Grizzlies have been in playoff mode for the last week and a half, right? Having to play the play-in tournament and get themselves into the playoffs. The Jazz locked up in the 1 seed and they were off for a week, right? So some of the rhythm is missing there. That's the first thing. The second thing is Donovan Mitchell and Rudy Gobert are both valuable to the Utah Jazz. They just present their value in different ways. Donovan's value is very easy to see. Why? He has the ball in his hands. And the one skill he possesses a lot of skills, but the one skill he possesses that is extremely important in the postseason is the ability to create your own shot, right? We all see it and we all know it. If you're looking at basketball and you're the most casual novice basketball fan, you say, oh, that guy's really good because you give him the ball and he can just score. Makes sense. For Rudy, he doesn't play that way, right? If he's going to get involved offensively, you've got to run actions and sets, have him pick and roll, have him screen assist, do different things, offensive rebound, crash the glass. It's a very different way in which he provides value. However, his presence, right, creates a different kind of gravity. The lob threat opens up three-point shooting space. I mentioned the screen assist. I mentioned what he does on pick and rolls, right? There's so much of what the Jazz do offensively that centers around having a big guy like that. It isn't the same visually as the way Donovan looks, but it matters. And then, of course, it's everything Rudy does defensively. In the playoffs, and you're talking about low-scoring games or lower scoring than the regular season, possessions matter in the postseason, right, Dex? So Rudy takes away possessions from the other team. If Donovan goes on and scores, that's buckets. You get points on your possession. If the opponent comes down and the guy wants to drive the lane and he thinks again, because like, oh, crap, Rudy's back there. He pulls out into a contested shot because of a defender. That doesn't show up as a credit for Rudy, but he didn't drive the lane. Why? Because he saw a 7'2" there, two guy there. That's a missed points on that possession, right? They're both count the same in the end. You scored points on one possession, you didn't allow points on another possession. It all ends in the end. It all adds up the same.
That's a great point. I think this is going to be a conversation further as we talk about other teams and other players in the playoffs, how we look at value and how we actually measure that, not just with our eyes, but also looking at the numbers as well. Now, let's talk about another series, and you know I'm happy to talk to you about this. This involves the Dallas Mavericks and the Los Angeles Clippers. And I see you shaking your head there, Gerard, already. You know what my motto is about the Clippers. You know exactly what that is.
I know.
And the Clippers, the Clippers, they're going to clip. They are down 2-0 in this series to the Mavericks. Luka Doncic looking like he's playing out of this world. Question's really simple here, Gerard. Are the Clippers in trouble?
Look, man, I mean, I don't know how you say they're not in trouble, Dex. Like, yo, I don't know what is happening right now with the Clippers. Look, Luka Doncic is at that LeBron James level now. What I mean by that is his brilliance is good enough to win them 2 games on its own. And guess what? They already got 2, up 2-0, which now means the Clippers have to beat them 4 times out of the next 5. Anybody think that's a realistic chance of happening? Because I don't. What are the things we hear about the Clippers the whole time when Kawhi and Paul George teamed up and Patrick Beverley was there? Man, the 2 best wing defenders in the NBA and then a great on-ball defender. Look, you know this is not a hot take show, but I'm going to borrow a line from our guy Russell Westbrook. Pat Bev tricking y'all, man. Look, that dude on defense, I don't care what he says when he gets a steal and he's chanting and puffing his chest, first team all defense. Luka hunts him every time on a switch, scores on him and tells him, you're too, this is a family show, effing small, right? Killing that dude. And look, and Pat's just kind of running around doing his thing. I mean, yeah, he did get a steal late and, whatever, but that doesn't matter. And Paul George and Kawhi, yo, man, is this just reputation for you guys now? Are we living off defensive reputation and not what actually happens? And look, I get it. You're going to be like, Gerard, but it's Luka Doncic. Look, this was their problem last year when they played the Denver Nuggets. They were up 3-1, and for whatever reason, defensively, couldn't do anything to close that series out. I just don't know what's happening with the Clippers defensively right now, and they're not playing tethered and together on a string. And as much as defense is about keeping your man in front of you, you got to be connected and together, and they are not connected and together right now.
5 straight playoff losses dating back to last year for the Los Angeles Clippers. I said this early in the show. People might have thought the problem was Doc Rivers. Not looking like that right now at all whatsoever. Now, Gerard, this week for Troop TV, you did a video where you talked about the Nets defense and looking at them. They've had the best offense in the league. We've seen other teams have the best offense in the league throughout the regular season the last couple of years, and that not necessarily translate to the playoffs. But the Nets defense, ranked 25th, has had some people with some cause for concern as to whether or not they could win a championship. Thus far in the playoffs against the Boston Celtics, they've looked pretty good. Is that something to get excited about in terms of being real, or is it that they're just playing the Celtics who don't even have Jaylen Brown?
So it was a little bit of both, right? I mean, this could not have been a better first-round matchup for the Nets in terms of getting their defense right. A Celtics team hobbled without its other star wing player in Jaylen Brown. That's huge. Now, the other thing about the Nets is the personnel they have, as Steve Nash has said all year, they're not going to be the 88 Detroit Pistons on defense, right? That's just, they don't have that kind of personnel. But they do have players who've won NBA championships, who made NBA finals and deep Western Conference playoff runs. You don't do those things unless you can get stops and play defense. So their three main guys, Kevin Durant, James Harden, Kyrie Irving, have all been on teams that have played the requisite defense to win championships, right? So they know what it takes. And you're seeing it now, again, as I mentioned, we're not playing every other night. They know who the opponent is. They're locked in for the playoffs. I mean, Durant is engaged defensively. He had 4 blocks last night. I mean, flying around everywhere using his length, right? And when you have that length, he's doing that. James Harden, everyone, kind of gets on Harden about he's like a turnstile on defense. That's a little bit overstated. You know what he is in the post? He is a thick dude you can't move. Like, he is strong. And when he gets down in the post, he's got strong hands. He can get strips. Kyrie, fighting through screens, extremely quick hands, getting pokes and steals. Joe Harris everywhere, jumping in passing lanes. Nicholas Claxton, who I mentioned in that video. So they have the personnel to be a competent defense. And with that offense, Dexter, they don't need to be elite. They just need to be competent. If they're competent defensively and they're healthy, they'll win an NBA championship.
All right, there you go. Prediction from Gerard right there. Let's look to a game I think a lot of people, at least where we are in New York City, are definitely looking forward to tonight. Tonight's Game 2 matchup between the Hawks and the Knicks. We saw what Ice Trae did to the Knicks in Game 1. You've seen all the talk around this. Mayor de Blasio has been getting out saying stuff about how you should play the game the right way and whatever you feel about that. What do you think are the keys for this game tonight, specifically for the Knicks, trying to even this series at 1 before the series shifts to Atlanta?
Pick and roll defense against Trae Young, number 1. They, and Tom Thibodeau didn't want to divulge too much of his secrets for the adjustment he's going to make, but they're going to have to make some adjustments because it wasn't so much that the Knicks weren't playing defense. They were. It's just that Trae read what they were doing in their defensive scheme and he obliterated it. Look, Coach Thorpe on True Blood to say this, like, college and high school kids play the game, pros read the game. Trae Young read the game, right? He was like, okay, I see what the Knicks are doing here. This is how we're going to play. You're going to sag off me? We talked about Luka Doncic before. I mean, nobody's reading the game right now better than that dude. It's LeBron level, right? He knows the double team's coming, patient enough, pass it out. That's what Trae did in Game 1. And the Knicks are going to have to make some adjustments, make Trae feel them a little bit more. He also is like in that Devin Booker mode. I said Devin's got a little bit of FU in him. I think Devin's got a lot. Trae's got a ton of FU in him, right? That's just, he lives his life based on slights, right? He's got Napoleon complex, like all that. So that crowd and all that that's just fuel for his fire. He loves it. But in terms of on the floor, the Knicks are going to have to be mindful of Bogdanovic. Kevin Huerter came off the bench, gave them some lively minutes. Clint Capella was pretty good. I think, Julius Randle got a little, there were times where I felt like he's rushed a little bit. Just slow down. First playoffs. And I think Elfrid Payton is going to have to get 0 minutes. I just don't like anything he does when he's on the floor. It's just bad news for the Knicks. I just think it's, cute, kind of playing them a little bit. Nah, let's just go with your Rose, Quigley, and Ntilikina. No Elfrid Payton minutes.
Well, I'll tell you what, that's going to make our producer Greg very happy. He doesn't want to see Elfrid Payton anymore. Flip real quick to the Atlanta side of things. What do they have to do if they want to have a 2-0 lead heading back home to the ATL?
I think it's similar in terms of getting into the Knicks and making them feel them, right? Frustrate Julius Randle, bother him. Make sure you're getting opportunities for Capella to get lobs to the rim. Get those guys into foul trouble, right? Have Thibodeau go deeper into his bench with guys maybe he doesn't really trust. And again, if Bogdanovic and Trae are doing their thing, they're going to be tough to beat. And Lou Williams, man, I think it was underrated from that game. Lou Williams, end of the third, start of the fourth, had his own mini 7-0 run. And look, in the playoffs, what did I say about Donovan Mitchell? Creating your own shots. Sometimes the defense is super tight. Yo, man, I need you to just get me a bucket. Lou Will's going to be 50 years old, scoring buckets on dudes in YMCAs and Lifetime Fitnesses. Because that's just what that dude does. And playoffs kind of seem to energize him again. So, getting positive Lou Williams minutes, I think, will be huge for Atlanta as well.
Positive Lou Williams minutes, no minutes for Elfrid Payton. That's what we're hearing here. We'll see what happens in game 2 tonight at the Garden. I'm sure it'll be a pretty wild one there, that's for sure.
Yo, shouts to the Knicks crowd, man. They won the weekend. Like they were by far the best crowd. Look, again, I don't know if the NBA is better if the Knicks are good. I don't want to say that, but I'll say this. I think when the Knicks are good, they have the best crowd in the NBA and the best home court. I'm a firm believer in that.
And you can see what it does for the product just even watching on TV, just how much it elevates the product of watching the game. So it'll be interesting to watch tonight, game 2 at MSG, Knicks Hawks. Gerard, thanks for joining me on NBA with Nuance. No hot takes here.
No hot takes, baby.